All right, in this video, we're going to learn the importance of a great vision, the cost of not being rigorous once you have that great vision, and what to avoid so that you can realize your vision. A bit about me, my name is Jason Prentice. I'm the founder of Outcomes COO. I'm an experienced COO and integrator for companies running on EOS. I've experienced starting, growing, scaling, and exiting businesses, and I'm a trained USA hockey coach. So at Outcomes, we're a firm of other COOs and integrators, and we help small businesses like yours either begin or on some part of their journey toward their vision, work on the things necessary to achieve that vision. Anytime I use this 10-year planning, you can substitute it for the long-term planning that you may have at maybe 8 years or 15 years or something, but the importance here is having some long-term plans. So to the entrepreneur, if you've taken the risks and had the sleepless nights and all those things, what you ultimately want is a predictable business with planned outcomes. And frankly, the right COO or integrator can make those outcomes possible. They can and should be bold. Here's a recent picture of me with Gino at a conference. So the important thing is start simple. You may already have a VTO and all that. If you do, fantastic. Hopefully a lot of this stuff is incorporated into that. But if you don't yet, you can start simple with fill in the blanks here. I'm not going to go through this whole thing. I have an example in a few slides. But basically, create at least a short paragraph of what you really want. And that will get the wheels turning and you can start to make things happen with that, especially if you're working with an EOS implementer. So some food for thought. It should be time bound. Be as specific as possible. Add as many details as necessary to articulate your vision to others. So I'll give you a quick example here. Imagine if I was to say my vision was to go north. Now, what you may not know about me is I live here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I said I wanted to go north. And you're like, yep, I'm here to help you. Let's do it. And you think I meant to go to Colorado. However, I meant to go to the North Pole. So if you join my team, you're going to be probably upset when I say that we're going to press on and go through Colorado and head all the way up to the North Pole. And that may be a not right fit type of situation. So if you're very specific, it'll help you find the right people for your journey and make sure you know if you or when you are off track. So another important thing is to hold annual and quarterly planning sessions. They are extremely important. That's so that you can kind of recalibrate, check in on things, make sure the progress is the way you want. Next is to build a high-performing team. The most important component to achieving your vision is the people. Of course, with EOS, we know people is always at the top of the wheel, and it's very important, and it's there for a reason. Without a high-performing team, it's going to be a challenge the whole way through, and you probably won't get there anyway. And then think about this. When you design your plan, you're not going to design your plan to say, well, there will be some inefficiency and waste. Of course, you're going to be realistic. You're going to set realistic goals. But at the same time, when you set those goals, you're not going to plan for inefficiency and waste. You're not going to plan for poor quarters or any other sort of wasteful stuff. So when you're designing that vision, if you don't have inefficiency and waste in there, that means you can't have it along the way. Otherwise, you will be off. So think about athletes, Olympians in particular. They set very specific goals. An Olympian knows when the next Olympics is. For instance, if they're a Winter Olympian, they're going to know when and where that next Olympics is. And they're going to have a plan all the way up to that time. It could be 3 or 4 years away. They're going to know what they have to do each day, each week, each month to move their way toward achieving probably a gold medal is their goal in that time 4 years from then. And they're really not going to have much waste or take time off. They're going to be very aggressive to that finite goal of that Olympics. So here's an example of one, 10-year vision statement. We have 75, this is for a small to medium-sized business. We have 75 clients, each generating an average of $15.7 thousand per month. This is of reoccurring revenue. This is a reoccurring revenue business. Those clients are happy and experiencing better than market ROI. That means they're probably not going to leave us. This ultimately creates a $14.1 million revenue company with 20% profit margin. They have 65 employees that are happily and they're ranked the best places to work in Phoenix. And me and my significant other have the autonomy to be able to travel 3 times per year. We are healthy and have plenty of time for rest and to be with our friends and family. So starting on January 1st, 2025 at $4 million revenue, 10 years later, December 31st, 2034, 40 quarters later, the annual growth rate of 15% and ending revenue of 14.1 million. So you can see that's a pretty significant jump. It's obviously going to take a lot of time and a lot of work to go from 4 million to 14.1 million. But if this was stated and you talk to your team about it and you talk to people joining your team along the way, it's pretty clear what you're up to here and what you want. So this helps get people aligned. So next I want to talk about this compounding curve. And there's some important things that will come along later in this, but most of us are familiar with compounding interest, whether it's from a mortgage or from investments or whatever. But the idea is that what you do in one quarter or month or year, the next year you go off from that point and then things start to roll up. This is not a aggressive compounding curve, but it demonstrates what I'm after here, which is to show that it's important that each quarter is achieved. Otherwise, the success of the next quarter is contingent on the previous one. So once you do that and you understand that and you show all that to your team and you say, this is where we're going and all these things, and hopefully there's some excitement and enthusiasm. And again, that's where those quarterly and annual meetings come in. You really get energy up and you get going. And the important thing to note to stay on track and to keep communicating to the team is 10 years is a finite amount of time. Although it is a long time, it is a finite amount of time. So I hear and I see a lot of visionaries that create VTOs and visions, and they'll literally bring up a vision that says, we did this back in 2022. It's 2025 for the record here. But they'll, show me a VTO or a vision that was done, 2, 3, 4 years ago, and they really haven't made any progress on that. So they've already, lost, 2 or 3, maybe 4 years. So either you have to recast and say, okay, the 10-year plan from 2022 is supposed to end in 2032. Now it's 2025. Let's make another 10-year plan and have it end in 2035. That wasn't the original goal. So that sort of disappoints me and discourages me. And by putting myself in the seat of the visionary, I'm encouraged by the fact that hopefully we can join their team, or they find somebody to join their team that can help them achieve that. Invest in, again, I cannot overstate this, invest in great quarterly planning and make sure you're measuring things. Develop a high-performing organization. Make sure you have a culture of accountability. Create and demonstrate the behaviors necessary to reach your vision. That is important. Some visionaries sort of check out before they have the right leadership team in place, and then that sort of mingles its way through the company and everybody starts to check out, and then, of course, the vision is going to be very difficult to achieve. Measure what matters. In this day and age, we have so much data and so much analysis that we can look at. It sometimes becomes overwhelming and people measure all sorts of small things that are really the details that don't matter. At the leadership team level, there's some very high level metrics that should be measured and managed. And then each department should be measuring different goals and making sure that they ladder up to the ultimate vision. Solve issues quickly, efficiently, and at the root. Again, we don't, this is straight out of EOS. We want to solve issues once and for all. We don't want to solve the symptoms and then have the issue creep back. We need to get down to the root. There's great systems and processes for that. And again, the right integrator can help you find ways of identifying issues, discussing and solving them quickly, and then celebrate the wins. Sometimes we get so mission focused, we don't take the time to celebrate the wins, and even the small wins matter. They help motivate the team, keep people enthused, keep people engaged. So make sure you're celebrating the wins. Throughout some part of the process, generally, complacency starts to creep in. So we start to ask ourselves, how do we miss our goals? We didn't achieve the rocks. We didn't achieve certain milestones. We didn't achieve certain goals at the end of the year. And a lot of times it comes back to not having the right people doing the right things. You may have the right people, they just may be in the wrong seat, or you might not have the right people and the right seats. There's loosely maintained accountability, which means, it's hit or miss, or it's concentrated around certain leaders. Certain leaders hold their teams highly accountable, other leaders don't. That's unacceptable. In order to achieve this ambitious vision, everybody, especially at the leadership team, needs to be accountable and holding their teams accountable. We get too busy. Sometimes leaders, visionaries, even integrators claim that they get too busy and they lose sight of the vision, and Obviously, if that happens, we're going to have a challenge. We didn't have the right operating system. So sometimes people go through and they're constantly changing their systems. And in a lot of cases, those changes, from my point of view and my experience, are disguising something else. So it's like we don't have the right, in this case, operating system or project management system or accounting system. It's not the system, it's the people within the system or the processes that have been outlined for those systems. We routinely let issues fester, so we don't run to the danger. We pick off the easy problems to solve and we leave the hard ones for next week. And then what do we do next week? We pick off the easy problems and we leave those hard ones for the next week after that. And ultimately, we let very important issues fester because we just don't want to get into them. That is the opposite of what we have to do to achieve these rigorous visions or these ambitious visions. We need to get after those ones, run to the danger, make sure we're attacking the biggest issues first. Sometimes we set too ambitious or unrealistic long-term and short-term goals. So this can be either or both. An unrealistic long-term goal is, I have this $4 million company and I want to be a $100 million company in 10 years from now. That may be realistic. Maybe there's acquisitions, maybe there's other things that I'm unaware of, but sometimes those are just vanity numbers that somebody has out there that they want to achieve. And there's really no reality to that. And it's hard to get the team to buy into something that's unrealistic. Same thing goes for short-term goals. Maybe in the first year, it's like we want to go from 4 to 8 million. Well, that might be unrealistic. So people don't get on board, they don't follow along, and you lose them right from the beginning. And then we don't fight to get things back on track. Sometimes things get off track. That does happen. And when they do, there's a tendency to sort of say, okay, well, we'll get it back next quarter or, at the end of the year. But if you don't fight to get it back on track right away as quickly as possible, more things fall off track and it becomes a perpetual cycle and you find yourself, a year or two down the road with very little progress. And lastly, accepting mediocrity. Obviously, if you have an ambitious goal, you cannot accept mediocrity. The Olympian, the people that are heading to the North Pole, trying to get to the top of a big mountain, you can't accept, mediocrity. You got to have, we always talk about A players, batteries included if you're a strategic coach, but you cannot accept mediocrity. You got to have high performers and they got to be performing at the high level all the time. And a great integrator and a great leadership team can help avoid all of these and should be avoiding all of these. In fact, if you don't have these things being avoided by your leadership team and integrator, you should consider looking at that team and determining if they're the right people for the vision. So back to the compounding curve. Again, pretty simple, straightforward curve. Everybody's familiar with it. You could see from left to right, as the years go on, the revenue goes up. This is just simply revenue. And I want to demonstrate here, if you're familiar with compounding, if you start later in life with investing or you take some time off of investing, it's not the end that you take, or it's not the beginning that you take the time off from, it's the end. So in this example, I'm going to use my pointer here. Let's just pretend, we get going and we have a bad quarter here. Well, that means that we didn't go from here to here. We're just going to assume we sort of flatlined through this part of the curve. And then we had some good quarters, that's great. And then all of a sudden we run into a little bit of an issue. Maybe there was a shakeup on the leadership team. Maybe, there's any number of things. You could be changing out an ERP or something like that. And we have a couple of flat quarters here. So this goes flat. So essentially this curve drops down here and picks back up. Then, we have another quarter where we fall off and we miss it. And ultimately we have some, toward the end, we have some really good years. Now, this of course could happen, but in a 40 quarter time period, 4 quarters is 10% of the time. So for 10% of the time, we weren't being efficient and we weren't after our goals. You could see that reduces the total revenue over that time from 15 million down to 12.2 million. By taking those 3 quarters off, this company never achieves the $15 million goal. They top out at the end of 10 years at 12.2 million, unfortunately. So now, of course, we could extend a year, we could do a lot of things, but that wasn't the original plan. And if a visionary and a team have set out to achieve a plan, then, in my mind, why not achieve it? So why it matters, and this is really important, is, unfortunately, the true vision is never realized. Again, you could tack on an extra year, you could ratchet down and say, 12.2 million is not too bad. 15 is a high number, but 12.2 is not bad. But the original vision was never realized, and that could be for some visionaries. That could kind of haunt them for a while. They may be disappointed and discouraged by that miss. They missed the highest revenue generating and most profitable year. So again, all those little short things end up at the end, and you miss the best year on this run. Fell short of the $14.1 million target by $1.8 million. And they missed out on $2.8 million in profit in the final year, because again, that's that 20% that they were after. If the existing valuation of the enterprise was reduced as well. So think about this. If you were trying to exit, let's assume in this story, this person was trying to get to their company to this point and then they were going to exit, and it was a 5 times multiple. The 5 times multiple that would have originally been on the 14.1 million was on the 12.2 million. So the 5 times multiple is essentially leaving a considerable amount of money on the table. So instead of the plan for 5 times 2.8 million equaling 14, they're at the 12.5 million. And, so now you sell the business for 12.5 instead of 14 again, because of those couple of quarters that were missed. So by missing the target, the owner misses out on the $2.8 million in the final year, plus the $1.5 million along the way. So that would be a total of $4.3 million by taking those 4 quarters off. Or not taking those 4 quarters off, but by missing those four quarters and not being aggressive about getting back on track within those quarters. That translates to approximately $430,000 over those 10 years each year. So, obviously, in the very early days, it's not like you have that $430,000 to do much with. But over time, that's what you're really giving up, is an average of $430,000 per year, or again, $4.3 million in the end. So the original 10-year plan was, if you added up all the profit over those 10 years, it would have been $16.3 million in profit that owner would have recognized. The transaction value would have been $14 million. So the total of that business to that owner over the 10 years of profits plus the exit value would be $30.3 million. By falling short of that 10-year goal, there was only $13.4 million in profit, because again, the most profitable year, the last year, was missed, and the transaction value was only $12.5 million. So the total was $25.9 million. That's a $4.4 million or 17% reduction by those 4 missed quarters early in the plan. So it's important. Every single quarter is important. That's what I stress to the teams that I'm on, the visionaries that I work with, is, we cannot squander a quarter. We have to stay vigilant. We have to stay rigorous, and we have to keep this team high performing so that we can achieve all this. So I think about it, and the worst part, I'm sure that owner that is in that situation, they're, probably still fairly well off financially, and hopefully, they have a good life and all that stuff. But doing all that was probably actually more difficult, because probably those missed quarters were potentially understaffing, the wrong people, fighting through system changes that were maybe unnecessary or not planned properly. So not only did the owner of this business leave $4.4 million on the table and accept 17% less over the 10-year span of that business, but it was probably ultimately harder for them to achieve that. So, in my mind, it's like, you got less out of it and it was more difficult to do. Those are 2 things that I would prefer not to have happen for people around me and that I care about, and for, frankly, any entrepreneur out there, because of the great risks we take and the great things that we produce for this world. So how can you avoid this? Set realistic but yet ambitious vision. Make sure your vision is clearly understood by those around you. Even those that don't work directly for you, you'll need a lot of help. So what does this mean? It means if you have vendors, maybe you have an IT vendor, an HR vendor, some people helping you out with marketing, perhaps even sales, maybe coaches, consultants, etc. Make sure those people, it may seem like, well, why do I have to explain to my IT guy why, my vision? I think it's important, because if your IT guy understands your IT firm understands what your vision is, they can make sure that your IT infrastructure is set up to accommodate that vision. And maybe one of those missed quarters is because you had a technology breakdown or failure that wasn't planned for. And had the IT firm known about where you were going, they would have informed you or recommended that you prepare in a certain way so that that didn't happen. So be very specific and purposeful about what you set out to achieve. And be sure that those around you that can contribute have context into how they can contribute. So again, if you're talking to the IT person, you might say, hey, can I take an hour to explain my vision and where you fit into this? And that person or that firm may say, that's not really important. We don't really care about that. And you have to really be assertive and say, no, it is important. I do have to let you know this because I want you to help me achieve this vision and help this team achieve this vision. You must have the right people. Again, the wrong people will thwart your vision. The wrong people may not be bad people. They may be people you have. They may be family members. They may be longtime friends. But ultimately, as you grow, if they're not able to keep up with you and keep up with that vision, you have to make the tough choice, but you have to always have the right people. And then do not squander a quarter. We sometimes think, a quarter, yeah, it's a long time, but at the same time, it's not that long. It's only 90 days. This was a throwaway quarter. We'll get it next time, But there's only 40 of them in a year, or in a 10-year plan, I'm sorry. So it's important. Each one of those is very important. And, next is ask for and accept help. I cannot overstate this. There's so many great resources out there. So many people, especially in the EOS community, that are in the spirit of helping first. That's one of our core values, is to help first. Ask for help. There's so many of us out there that are generous with our time, generous with our information, and want to truly help other people succeed. Next is enjoy the journey. These 10 years are some of the most important 10 years of your life. You should enjoy them. So what does that mean? A lot of times we're in the middle of we're middle-aged when we get to this point where we have the good fortune of having the success that we've had to enable us to build a business and continue to run a business. And, we may have families, we certainly have friends and other people around us. And we don't want to get into a place where we're constantly feel like we're working and we're stressed out and we're miserable and we're failing. Ask for help and make sure you can enjoy those 10 years. You don't want to be one of these people who are like, I'm so focused on this 10 years, life is miserable, but at the end it will be great. What could happen is by the end, you really, your family doesn't really, they're not engaged with you. Your friends, the same thing. You've prioritized your business over your friends and you don't have any friends. There is a way to balance that. Actually, it's the EOS Life. So, if you haven't read that, I recommend reading that. You can enjoy this, you can achieve your vision, you can have a good life, and you can do all that. And then lastly, which is the most difficult thing for visionaries, is to actually execute. That's where you need that right hand, the integrator or COO. You have to relentlessly execute. And if you can't do it as the visionary and parts of your leadership team aren't great at it, find a terrific integrator that, if nothing else, they know how to execute and get stuff done, because getting stuff done is the key. Otherwise, there's no chance. So the next steps, commit to starting, write it down. If you don't have a VTO or a vision statement, it should take you 10 minutes, 15 minutes to get one down. And then make sure that you have a realistic but ambitious 10-year plan. Start to build out that more full plan. You might have those 2 or 3 or 4 sentences, but build it out into a bigger plan. You can use the VTO tool for that. And there's implementers that'll help you with that out there. Break it down to a 3-year picture. The 10-year plan is sometimes hard to achieve. If I said, we're a $4 million company, I want to get to 14.2. There's a lot of space in there. You may not fully understand it. It's hard to get people on the team to fully understand it. So break it down, get to a 3-year picture, get to something a little bit closer, start to model that out, close your eyes, visualize it, know that you can do it, and then set those annual objectives to ladder up to that, and set quarterly goals that ladder up to that. Sounds pretty easy. In concept it is. It's not always simple to execute, but it really can happen. All of us probably know plenty of people that have not only achieved their vision, but exceeded their vision. And my question to you is, why not have it be you? If you want some help with this, or if you're struggling, reach out to me, reach out to people in the EOS community. My contact info is there. Our website is there, outcomecoo.com. And my email is jason@outcomescoo.com. I love talking to entrepreneurs. I love people that are getting after it and helping out the world. So let's make it happen. Thank you very much. Hopefully this was helpful.